Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Most honorable and respectable ulama-e karam, sadat-e karam, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, lovable youngsters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope and I pray that each and every one of you are well. You have been patiently waiting, first for the guests to arrive, then for them to do what it is that they're good at, whether it's tilawat of the Quran, naats or nasheed upon Rahmatul lil Alameen, Shafi'ul Muzdibeen, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And now you'll have to be a little bit more patient, especially Auntie Jia. मेरी पता है मौजू ऐसा देता है that if I was to start speaking now, I'll probably, if I do justice to the topic, bila fakhar, if I was to do justice to the topic, probably finish at Fajr time. Auntie Ji, we allow? Acha, you'll regret saying that. Those who know me and who come and listen regularly, they know that once I get the mic, there's no stopping me. It's inherent in our DNA. Lekin, mawzu aisa hai. MashaAllah, full credit goes to al-Lawh Institute, bil khusus in particular to Brother Sajid. MashaAllah, for coming up with a quite thought-provoking topic. It took me around 3 or 4 hours just to do the mutaliya to it and prepare it and write it down. So to deliver that will require a lot of time as well. So you'll have to be patient. Inshallah, I'll try to leave out some points as well. Already I've left out a lot. But what I have in front of me, I try to do my best to deliver that to the people. So you will have to be patient. No doubt this is a gathering which is azim and blessed. A waqia comes to mind, ye tamheedi baatan, just to warm up my voice. That Hafiz ibn al-Jawzi, who is a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions a waqia, and hamare Dada Ustad Huzur Ziyal Ummat, Mir Karam Shah al-Azhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, they do nakal of this in the Ziya'un Nabi Sharif. That Hafiz ibn al-Jawzi, he mentions that the place where the people gather to celebrate the Mawlid and the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in that place Allah Almighty showers His mercy for 1 full year. Subhanallah. Say Subhanallah. Subhanallah. For 1 full year, Allah Almighty showers His mercy on that place where the people celebrate the Mawlid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Alhamdulillah, we are gathered to celebrate Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's Milad Sharif, to celebrate his blessed birth, his Amad into this dunya. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala accept our hazri here. Ye na dekho that it's not in the masjid and it won't be kabool, that it won't be accepted. Jithai hoga na, wherever it is, as long as you are celebrating and you are commemorating, فَلْيَفْرَهُ, and you are fulfilling that hukam that Allah Almighty mentions in the Quran, then no doubt this is a source of najat and salvation. As long as you're fulfilling the hukam. فَلْيَفْرَهُ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُ. Surah Yunus, Surah number 10, verse number 58. Lekin ek aur mawzu hai. Inshallah, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala give me the tawfiq to speak the truth. Allah give you the tawfiq to listen to the truth. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ فِي الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. I will say one more thing. Very important. That whilst you are sat here, whenever you hear the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when I say Rasulullah, or I say Prophet of Allah, or I say the Holy Prophet, your duty and responsibility, brothers and sisters, is to say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sallallahu alamatu ahli sunnati wal jama'ati kasratu salati ala nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And mashallah, your grandfather said this, Imam Zain al-Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that a sign of a person from the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'at is that he sends in abundance darood and salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ye Sunni ki pehchan, ye Ahl Sunnah ki pehchan. But kasrat ke saath you send darood and salawat upon Rahmatul lil Alameen. So whenever I mention the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ye mahol paida karo, ye mahol paida karo. और ये भी देखो हदीस शरीफ of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says that wherever there is a gathering, a majlis, and Imam Abu Sulaiman al-Jazuli rahimahullah ta'ala, they mention this particular riwayat in the muqaddimah, in the introduction to Dalail al-Khairat. They say wherever Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam's remembrance is being made, from that gathering, ra'ihatun tayyibatun, a beautiful, sweet-smelling fragrance comes from that gathering. We are gathered to remember Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We log aapne sochne wasan, why are we here? Just to give you some proofs and evidence. Asal mawzu ye nahi, ye tamheedi baat hai. An introduction. Ra'ihatun tayyibatun. These are the alfaz of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That whenever the people gather to remember Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, from that gathering comes a sweet fragrance. And this sweet fragrance goes all the way to the Asma. وَتَقُولُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ هَذَا مَجْلِسٌ. And then the malaika who are looking for that gathering, they say, this is that gathering where the rood and salawat are being sent upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then malaika come and they place their wings around the people in that gathering. And then sakinatul qalb, this peace and tranquility of the heart, begins to enter into those people who are remembering Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Baba, ye tafsir ki baat hai. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Very quickly, Imam Mujahid rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, student of the great Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and Qadi Iyad's nakal of this in his Ash-Shifa. They say here, zikrullah refers to zikr Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That when you remember Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, then Allah Almighty puts sakinatul qalb into your heart. He puts peace and tranquility, sakina into your heart when you remember Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are in that majlis. Yes. We are in those gatherings. And we are blessed and fortunate that Allah has chosen us. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has favored us to sit in these gatherings. Har bande ne naseeb vich nahi honda na. Sirf us bande ne naseeb vich honda. That person who is fortunate to sit in these gatherings are those people who Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a shafqat of. Ye aqeeda. Ye aqeeda. So Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, you'll have to bear with me. I do this. I go off topic, then come back again, then go off topic. Right? Different channels. So stay with me. You might learn a thing or two. No role or danger for me. Oh, that is my partner in crime. Very core andaz, a core style that people assume that, oh, he's going to be like him. Mine, just Quran and Sunnah. That's it. Nothing else. So listen to me. Listen to the words and the ayat of the Quran and the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And no doubt, inshallah, azza wa jal, you shall benefit from this. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, alladhi abda'a al-aflaq wal-ardeen. والصلاة على من كان نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاكرين والشاهدين والحمد لله رب العالمين. ببركة إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا رحمة للعالمين. One more time, कोई ज़बान खामोश ना रहे. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا خاتم النبيين. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. After praising Allah Almighty Jalla Jalaluhu and after sending infinite peace and salutation, durood and salawat upon the best of creation, upon the light of creation, upon the purpose of creation, Sayyidul Awwaleen wal Akhirin, Sayyidul Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, Sultan Medina, Nur Sina, Ahmad Mustafa wal Mujtaba, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Each and every one of us should know that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam announced his nubuwwat and risalat at the age of 40. How old was Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam? 40 years old when they announced their nubuwwat and risalat. Very key word here, announced. Yani they did the alan at the age of 40. Some people, sadly and unfortunately, in the communities and the societies and in the times that we live in today, have taken this in a different light. They have said, Ma'azallah, astaghfirullah, that before Alan Nabuwwat, before Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam announced his prophethood, he did not know that he was a prophet of Allah. So people have said this, they have written this. And not only this, they have said that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ma'azallah, was gumrah and misguided as well. Ye jo ayat Quran hai na, وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًا فَهَدَى. Certain tarjaman Quran, yani people who have translated the Quran, have translated this as that Allah Almighty found Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam misguided and then guided. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. Let it be openly known and make your aqidah sahih that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet of Allah when Adam was between spirit and body. When Adam was between spirit and body, yani ruh and jasad, at that point Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet of Allah. Dalil, pick up the Jami of Imam at-Tirmizi, rahimahullah ta'ala, and you will find the narration, and Qadi Iyad, they do nakal of this in the Ash-Shifa as well. Rawi Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that they asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, qalu, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, mata wajabat lakan nubuwwatu. Mata wajabat lakan nubuwwatu. That, O Prophet of Allah, when was nubuwwat al-risalat decreed upon you? When was prophethood decreed upon you? At that point, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, وَآدَمُ بَيْنَ الرُّوحِ وَالْجَسَدِ. When Adam Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was between ruh, yani spirit, and jasad, yani body, at that point, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet of Allah. At that point, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet and he was a messenger of Allah. Because Allah Almighty says, Kuntu kanzan makhfiyan. Imam Rabbani Mujaddid al-Fisani, Sheikh Ahmad Farooqi Asir-Hindi rahmatullah alayh. They do nakal of this particular riwayat, this hadith, in their Ma'kulat and other kutub al-hadith as well. Mashhur riwayat, Kuntu kanzan makhfiyan. Allah Almighty says, I was a hidden treasure. فَأَحْبَبْتُ أَنْ أُعْرَفَ. Allah Almighty goes, I wanted to be known. I desired to be known. Though the word desired isn't here suitable and applicable, but for our own understanding, Allah Almighty wanted to be known. So how did He announce Himself to, or how did He bring existence about? Allah Almighty created the Noor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then from Noor Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala created the rest of kainat. Ye ek aur ilmi bahas hai, ye asal mawzu nahi. But this is just to remove that misguidance or those misconceptions which are in some youngsters' minds. We go to schools and colleges and universities, workplaces, ajkal hai, social media ka daur hai, where we've got keyboard warriors sitting behind their laptop screens, dictating what is deen and Islam on Facebook and Twitter, telling us what is right and wrong and halal and haram. To clarify those people's misconceptions, this is why we are giving these dalal. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was a prophet of Allah Almighty when Adam was between spirit and body. And from Noor Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala created the whole of kainat. This whole kainat was created because of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala did not create Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Noor, Allah Almighty would not have created you and me. Or ye bhi dekho, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala put this Noor, Noor Mustafa, first in the loins of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, in the Tafsir Kabir, they do, or they mention, and Alama Yusuf bin Ismail al-Nabhani rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, they do nakal of this in the Al-Anwar al-Muhammadiyya min Mawahib al-Ladunniya. Under the ayat of the Quran, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. Under this ayat of the Quran, Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullah alayh, they mention that when Allah Almighty told the malaika to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, yani sajda ta'zim, a prostration of honor and respect, not a sajda of ibadah. There is a difference here. When Allah Almighty ordered all of the malaika to prostrate, Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullah alayh, he says that here, jismani taur they were prostrating to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, lekin Nurani thought they were prostrating to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the malaika, they saw the Noor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the forehead of Abu Bashar, Adam alaihi salatu wasallam. And then this Noor was transferred from pure loin to pure loin to pure loin, until the Noor was visible on the forehead of Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala. And Imam Zarqani rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, they mention this in the Sharah of Alama Kastalani's Al-Mawahib al-Ladunniya. The Noor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was visible in the forehead of Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala. And all of the women of Makkah al-Mukarramah, they wanted their nikah with Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala, because they could see this beauty which was emanating from the forehead of Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala. Lekin Allah Almighty had decreed and destined for the nikah to happen with Sayyidah Bibi Amina salamullah alayha. And then this Noor was transferred from the forehead of Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu into the pure and blessed womb of Sayyidah Amina radiyallahu ta'ala anha. And then on Bara Rabi'ul Awwal, Monday the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, this Noor came into the dunya and illuminated the dunya. This Noor came into the dunya in a jismani form and it illuminated the dunya. ये भी देखो अकीदा, ये ना समझो बस जी नूर ही नूर. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, no doubt, a nur, haq. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also bashar as well. But not any ordinary bashar, not any ordinary human being. Lekin Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is afdalul bashar, is the greatest of all human beings. And the dalil for this, as Hazrat mentioned, on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, this journey was split into two parts. On the night of Al-Isra, or the part of Al-Isra, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Masjid al-Aqsa led all of the Anbiya and Mursaleen in the Salah. Therefore, no doubt, Allah Almighty's greatest creation sent to mankind were the prophets and messengers. But the greatest of them was no doubt Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Dalil that he is the greatest of all human beings. Because the one who led them in the prayer was Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. A dalil that he is the greatest of all, a symbolic dalil that he is the greatest of all prophets and messengers. And then a dalil of his Nuraniyat, as Alama mentioned, Hazrat mentioned, and Alama Ismail Haqqi Rahmatullah alayhi, they do nakal of this riwayat in their Ruhul Bayan. They do nakal of that riwayat that Hazrat mentioned in their Ruhul Bayan, yani the Tafsir Ruhul Bayan. That when Jibreel got to Sidratul Muntaha, Jibreel says, I cannot go beyond this point. Why? Because if I do, my wings will perish. Where was the intiha of Jibreel? Was the ibtida of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The greatest of all humans is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And in terms of his Nuraniyat, he is the greatest of all as well. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Nuraniyat is haq. His Bashariyat is haq as well. Lekin the Aqidah of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaat is that his Bashariyat is Nuraniyat. That his Bashariyat is Nuraniyat. This is the Aqidah of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaat. Lekin ye asl mawzui. This is just to remove that clarification or misconception from our mind. Or they could just to give you a further dalil from the Quran. You might say, Imam Sahib, you're just talking from ahadith. Give me a proof from the Quran. Dekho Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in the Quran picks a qasam by the whole life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. La'amruka innahum lafi sakratihim ya'mahun. Tell me, does a person's life begin at the age of 40? Or does that person's life begin at the point of conception? At the point of, not conception, but the point of that person being conceived. When does life begin? Huh? At the age of 40? Or when that person is conceived? Yani comes into the dunya. When that person is conceived, that's when his life begins. And Allah Almighty here in the Quran is picking a qasam by the whole life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. La'amruka. Allah Ta'ala says, by your life, Ya Rasulullah. And again, Allama Yusuf bin Ismail Nabhani Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi, and ulama have mentioned that Allah Almighty does not pick a qasam by anybody's life except for the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Our Nabi and Rasul, those people who look to degrade the rank and status of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, those people have not read the Quran. Those people have not understood the Quran. Our Nabi and Rasul's maqam is so great that not only does Allah pick a qasam by his life, but Allah Almighty picks a qasam by his zamana as well. Wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr. And again, Imam Fakhruddin Razi Rahmatullah alayhi, under this ayat, wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, they mention in the Tafsir Kabir that wal asr, yani wow, harful qasam, or harful qasmiyah. They said that here Allah Almighty is picking a qasam by time. And which time is he picking a qasam by? They're picking the qasam of the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allahu Akbar. Allah Almighty is picking qasam by his life. Allah Almighty is picking qasam by his zamana. And Allah Almighty is picking qasam by his maqam as well. La uqsimu bihazal balad wa anta hillum bihazal balad wa walidin wa ma. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala picks a qasam by the shahr of Makkatul Mukarramah, by the streets of Makkatul Mukarramah, by the valleys of Makkatul Mukarramah. Why? Because this was that land and that blessed city that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was born in. Allahu Akbar. Aqidah darus karo. Or, this was just pehla jumla. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam announced the nubuwwat and risalat at the age of 40. Don't assume that he wasn't a Nabi or Rasul before this. This is the 5, 10, 15 minutes of clarifying that misconception, and no doubt this will go on YouTube as well. And when you speak with dalail, you speak with reference. Yani kissa kahani tu sunya tu baya. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, after they announced the nubuwwat and risalat, went through extreme difficulty, persecutions, attacks, insults. 13 years in Makkatul Mukarramah, until eventually Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had to leave their own home city and migrate to Yathrib, which later, through this migration, became known as Madinatul Munawwarah. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his Sahaba Ikram, loyal Sahaba, not the Munafiqs, loyal Sahaba, They fought in the battle of Badr, they fought in the battle of Uhud, they fought in the battle of Khaybar, they fought in the battle of Khandaq. They fought all these ghazwat and these wars and these battles in order to defend Islam and in order to raise the flag of Islam. So here we dekho the qurbani of the Sahaba Ikram. You and me sometimes fail to understand this. We fail to appreciate this. You and me today have it very easy. Sahaba Ikram had to sacrifice their tan, man, dan, their watan, their mal, their daulat, their tajarat, their houses, everything for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they didn't hesitate. They didn't think twice. Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Mu'az radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was asked before the battle of Badr. He was the leader of the Ansar. And he said, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to him, "Oh Sa'd, if we fight against the mushriks of Makkah, will you stand with me?" And what did he say? Aqidah of the Sahaba. He said, "Ya Rasulullah, we are not like Qawmi Musa, who said to Musa that you and your Lord go and fight against Pharaoh. Ya Rasulullah, if you tell us to jump into the ocean, we will jump into the ocean." Aqidah of the Sahaba. And today we have certain people in our society, certain people in our communities who insult and curse the Sahaba Ikram. Are ashabi kan nujum bi ayyihim iktadaytum ihtadaytum. The Sahaba are like the stars. They take their shine from the moon, which is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whichever Sahabi you follow, you shall be guided. And how dare you today insult the Sahaba Ikram? How dare you today attack the shine of the Ahl Bayt Athar? People who lack adab. Log aane ki asa tabligh karne hai. Log deen ko, we are calling them towards Islam. एक पास और लगे हुए हूं आजकल ये नौजवान में जो शुरू होया है लास्ट को प्रदेश दावा माना असा दावा करनी जी असा दावा करनी we are calling people towards Islam. Are rather than calling people towards Islam, you're taking them towards the fires of Jahannam. You can have ilm, you can have ibadat, but if you don't have adab, your ilm and ibadat is of no value. Shaitan had ilm, he was the leader of the malaik. Shaitan had ibadat. There's not a single place on this earth where he hasn't done sajda. But Shaitan, he lacked adab and he lacked respect and honor for a Nabi of Allah Almighty. And I mentioned, this Nabi of Allah Almighty wasn't just Adam alayhi salam, but it was the Nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His gustaki was towards Nur al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And because of this reason, Allah Almighty made him ar-Rajib, the accursed one. And Allah Almighty threw him out of Jannatul Firdaus. Don't fall into that trap, that you refer to him like you refer to one another, that you raise your voices above the voice of Rasulullah, that you call him like you call one another. Arey, don't you read the Quran? Allah says, "An tahbata a'malukum wa antum la tash'urun." Your deeds will be wasted, your deed will not be accepted, and you will not even realize this. You'll be doing your bayan, people will be laughing at you, and you think you're doing tabligh. In reality, your iman is being taken away from you. In reality, your Islam is being taken away from you. In reality, you are showing disrespect and dishonor to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all those who have a nisbat and a connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hudaybiyah took place in the 6th year after Hijrah. Then eventually Allah Almighty gave Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after years of struggle and hardship, and He gave the Sahaba Ikram and the Ahl Bayt Athar, gave them victory. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ. That the help of Allah Almighty came, and victory also came as well. But the Makkah was a very important. I'm tempted to touch upon that, but I'll leave that for another day. But the Makkah where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam forgave all of his enemies. Rahmatul lil Alameen, Shafi'ul Muznibeen. He forgave all of his enemies. Today you and me, we can't even forgive our sibling brother. This is who we are. And we say we are ummatis of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And let me make this openly known. And I make this a challenge as well. Nowhere will you find in the seerah and the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam swore at his enemies. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed his enemies. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked down on his enemies. Today you and me, we are just resorting to just this. Swearing at people, cursing people, taking people out of Islam. Flana flana banda kharij deen tu. Flana flana banda kharij deen tu. And we said that this is the maslak of Ala Hazrat. Baba, from Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam all the way to Ala Hazrat, Azim wa Barakat, Mujaddad ad-Din wa Millat, you will not find a single Imam of the Ahl Sunnah where they would curse somebody, where they would swear at somebody, where they would take people out of Islam. And our ulama, there were people who brought people into Islam. People would just look at them and 9.3 million Hindus would accept Islam. People would just look at them and 80,000 people would do tawbah at their hands in Baghdad Sharif. People would just look at them, they would be in prison. Imam Rabbani was in prison. But hundreds and thousands of people accepted Islam. Hundreds and thousands of people did tawbah. Today you and me, we have just resorted to this hatred towards one another. This nafrat towards one another. Thinking that we are the tekadar of the deen today. Ghusl karne na tarika nahi pata. Wudu ne faraid bhi nahi pata. You sit behind your keyboards and you think you have a right to dictate what is Islam, who's in and who's out, who's dakhil and who's harij. Who's given you this right? Who's given you this authority? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sent as a mercy to mankind. We today as his ummatis need to also be a mercy to mankind as well. We need to be a mercy to the non-Muslims. We need to be a mercy towards the Muslims as well. Have we forgotten all of this? Is the purpose of the Mawlid just to take out flags and put up decorations? And make a cake and put Langar Sharif and Dastar Khan jaisa Milad Sharif manane hai? Ye Milad Sharif ka maqsad hai? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came into this dunya to take dead hearts, resurrect them and bring them back to life. And he came and made Abu Bakr into a Siddiq. He came and made Umar into Al-Faruq. He came and made Uthman into Al-Ghani. He came and made Ali into Al-Murtaza. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ Baba, ye sab Quran ka faisla hai. He purified people's hearts. He would mend broken hearts. You and me through our lisan and our zaban today, through our tongue today, we are taking people away from Islam. We're crying today. The Muslims are being persecuted. The Muslims are suffering today. The Muslims are suffering because they are not holding on to the Hablullah. They're not holding on to the rope of Allah Almighty. And the rope of Allah Almighty is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, Imam al-Mufassirin, Sahabi Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they say under this ayat of the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. But oh people, hold on firmly to the rope of Allah. And وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, you will never ever be divided. And Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, they say Hablullah is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That the rope of Allah Almighty is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But we're not holding on to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam today. Well, that hadith sharif comes to mind from Mishkat Sharif. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, none of you will have iman. गौर से सुनो, तवज्जो करो. आजकल बड़े बड़े नारे ऐसा लाने हैं, ऐसा तो बगैर कोई सुन्नी है ही नहीं. Any sign of iman. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, none of you will be a true believer until your desires, your hawa, your ego, your pride, your arrogance, until this does not follow what it is that I came with. Jitu bihi. Yani, your desires do not follow the Quran, or your desires do not follow the Sunnah. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, you have no iman. Your iman is naqis. You have no iman. If you don't follow Quran, if you don't follow Sunnah, you just follow your desires. You call such a person a kafir, you take him out of the deen. You let your emotions dictate who you are. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, La yu'minu ahadukum. There is no iman in him. And that's all we are today. Emotional people. Jazbaat mein joy jane. And that's it. We let our anger cloud our judgments. No ilm, no knowledge, no ma'rifah. No sitting at the feet of the ulama ikram. But self-study. That's who we are today. And we're going to come to this. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam addressed all of this in his farewell sermon. Fateh Makkah took place in 8th year after Hijrah. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did their first and only Hajj in the 10th year after Hijrah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam during their lifetime did 4 Umrahs and they did 1 Hajj. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam performed a farewell Hajj in the 10th year after Hijrah, 10 years after migration. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, on this occasion of the farewell Hajj, Hajjatul Wada, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam performed the farewell sermon as well. And in this sermon there are 18 articles. Mere Ustad Muhtaram, Muhsin al-Sunnah, Imdadul Ummah, Mufassir al-Quran, Hazrat Alama Muhammad Imdad Hussain Pirzada, Damat Barakatum al-Aliyah wal-Qudsiyah, Hafizahullah Ta'ala. They have written all of this in their book Human Rights, in light of Quran and Sunnah. They say there are 18 articles, yani 18 points that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam touched upon in the farewell sermon. I'm not going to go through all 18. I've just chosen 1 or 2 or 3. Yes, maybe a little bit more. Are you still with me? Yes. Maybe chala jasa. Maybe wapas at Jana Bradford. Then back down to Wakefield, then to Walthamstow, then back to Jamia Karan tomorrow. Hazrat was saying that they have not had any sleep, but how do you think we'll be here? Allahu Akbar walillahi. Gaur se suno tawajjuh karo. Ye jo tamhidiya baat hai, ye asal mawzu. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stood up, 124,000 Muslims in front of him. Allahu Akbar. The nachor of 23 years of hard work. The mehnat, the hard work that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam put in, that is now in front of him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. 124,000 Sahaba Muslims are in front of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And our Ustaz said that the one who was standing at the back, he could hear just as clearly as the one who was standing at the front. Mu'jiza of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The one who was standing at the back, 124,000. The one who was standing at the back could hear just as clearly as the one who was standing and sitting at the front. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam began, after praising Allah Almighty, he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that you may not see me after this year, you may not see me after this year. Ilmul Ghaib of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This proved to be the case. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling his Sahaba Ikram that you may not see me after this year, you may not see me after this year. At that point, one man stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, what must we do then? What must we do? At that point, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and this is the first article that Ustaz mentioned. They said that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that what you should do is worship your Lord. You should worship your Lord. You should offer the 5 daily prayers. You should observe the fast of Ramadan. You should perform the Hajj. And you should pay the zakat joyfully. And if you do this, then your Lord will enter you into Jannatul Firdaus. Allah Almighty will enter you into Jannatul Firdaus. If you observe these pillars of Islam, if you observe these qawaid of Islam, these foundations of Islam, then in return Allah Almighty will give you Jannatul Firdaus. This is tafsir on Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran. The lafz mubashir, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came as a giver of glad tidings. This is the glad tidings he gave you and me. That you stay away from haram, you do halal, and you worship Allah, you observe your fast, you read your 5 daily prayer, you give your zakat, you go on Hajj, then in return Allah Almighty will give you Jannah. Allahu Akbar. Acha, my topic is to take that and relate it to today. Yeah? And I'm just going to take one point from this first article. Bear with me. Out of these things, the most important thing out of these pillars is the 5 daily prayer. Yes? The 5 daily prayer. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala tells you and me in the Quran that a sign of a muttaqi, opening verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, a sign of a muttaqi, yani a God-fearing person, a man of Allah, a woman of Allah, is that person who observes his prayer. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala tells you and me, time and again in the Quran, observe your prayer. And this hukam of reading salah, Mullah Jeevan Rahmatullahi Alayhi, they mention in the Nurul Anwar. Allah Almighty in the Quran, from Surah Al-Fatiha to Surah Al-Nas, they have given the hukam of reading the Quran, reading the salah over 500 times. How many times? Over 500 times. Allah has told you and me time and again, Yuqimuna salata, Aqimis salata, establish the prayer, read your prayer. Over 500 times. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala's Nabi alayhi salatu was salam, he said to you and me, the miftahul jannati as-salatu. Musnad Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal ki riwayat. Nabi salatu wasalam outlining the excellence of the prayer. He said that the key to Jannatul Firdaus is your prayer. You read your prayer, in return Allah will give you Jannah. And this is the first thing that Allah Almighty will question you and me about on the day of Qiyamah, the day of judgment. Tirmizi Sharif ki riwayat. Nabi salatu wasalam said the first thing Allah Almighty will ask the servant is regarding his prayer. If his prayer is in order, then Allah Almighty will accept the rest of his a'mal. But if his prayer is deficient, yani there's shortcoming in his prayer, Allah Almighty will then look at his sunnahs. If there's shortcoming in the sunnahs, Allah Almighty will look at the nawafil. Time and again Allah Almighty giving you and me the opportunity to redeem ourselves. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is that how many of us today observe our 5 daily prayer? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Hukman, he said what? Observe the 5 daily prayer. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala tells this, you and me time and again in the Quran, do this. Observe the prayer. Why do we observe the prayer? Ustaz have written, they've said the reason why we observe the prayer is to create humbleness within us. And this is what Allah says in the Quran. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Opening verses of Surah Al-Mu'minun. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says that those people who are successful, those believers who are successful, are those people who have this humbleness when they stand for the prayer. This humility and this taqwa when they stand for the prayer. The sad reality is today that when you and me stand for the prayer, we're standing in front of Allah, but our zihan and our thoughts are somewhere else. Especially if our football team is playing. Or our cricket team is playing. Jaldi namaz padhne apna farz karita. Up and down like Woody Woodpecker. Jaldi apni namaz makai shura. Oh Baba, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has no need for this salah. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Two opposites here. One is those people who are successful that when they stand for the prayer they have khashiyun, yani they have humility. They have khushu. And then there are those people, other extreme. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala curses those people who read salah. Why? Because when they read their salah, they are lazy. When they read their salah, they are negligent. When they read their salah, they don't observe the time. Chalo ji, un padhne ya. Zohar chali jani hai. Chalo ji, Zohar asar gathi kari gansa. Asar chali jani hai. Maghrib chali jani hai. Koi oshi, koi parwah nahi. Even though Allah Almighty says in the Quran, Inna salata kanat alal mu'minina kitabun mawquta. That is your duty and obligation that you establish your prayer at the appointed time. Baba, this is an ayat of the Quran. But we read namaz when we want to read namaz. Brothers and sisters alike, we think salah. You see today, Bamari ye hai na. Milad Sharif was the time hai. Julus Chane was the time hai. If there's a protest in Trafalgar Square in London, we'll make special time to go there. This is one extreme. Then the other extreme, if somebody was to come and sit here and do ghibat all night, we'll sit here and listen to their ghibat. If somebody was to come and lie against the Muslim brother, we'll sit here and we'll listen to those lies. We'll do everything against Islam. And then we say, oh, ji, Muslimana par hamla ho raha aajkal. Muslimana par tabah ho raha aajkal. Allahu Akbar. How do you expect the Muslims? This is what the Jewish rabbi said. And I was telling somebody earlier. Jewish rabbi, chief rabbi in this country. He says we don't need to fear the Muslims. He said we don't need to fear the Muslims. Why? Because he goes, the masajids are empty at the time of Fajr. The Muslims were successful when the masajids were full at the time of Fajr. Today the Muslims neglect their masjid at the time of Fajr. We have nothing to fear. They're not going to uprise and they're not going to unite if they're not going to establish their Fajr prayer. And isn't that the case today? That today we have time for protests on the streets, but we don't have any time for Salatul Fajr. We don't have any time for Salatul Fajr. Dakho na, 10 minute Imam Sahib. I'm so sorry. We're very late. Another time, inshallah. Usatane keep going on. Ande mahita kaddana. Senior management. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala ke. और ये भी देखो इस्लाह के लिए, not for a cheap laugh, इस्लाह के लिए. Too many times you notice in the masjid that people when they are coming up from their ruku, ये क्या नमाज है? हज़रत बैठो ना, ulama sat here and Ustaz of Imdadul Karam is or Imdadul Fiqh is with me as well. One of the wajibat of salah is that you stand for every position for the minimum duration of one tasbih. This is a wajib of salah. And if you miss a wajibat of salah, Sajdatul Sahab is obligatory upon you. Yes? You and me, we read our salah, koi parwah nahi. We say, Imam sahab asli dua nahi kabul honi hai, tu sa dua mango. Peer sahab asli dua nahi kabul honi, taweez likhi diyo. We ring DM, inshallah, make him do poo-poo on the phone. Namaza nahi par, kya padne aasa? If you want to know what salah is, then look at the salah of Sayyidina Mawla Ali radiyallahu anhu. They were reading their salah, and ghaliban, in some riwayat there was arrows, in some riwayat there was a wasp, in different mukhtalif riwayat. And this person or this thing came and injured them around 15, 16, 17 times. And they were bleeding shar'an, they could have broken their salah. After they finished their salah, the person who was standing there next to him, they said, Huzur, shar'an, you could have broken your salah. Why didn't you break your salah? Arrows were being fired at you. You could have done whatever you needed to do to break your salah. They go, which arrows were fired at me? I don't know any arrows that were fired at me. My talakat was with Allah Almighty. My nisbat and connection was with Allah Almighty. Isi tariqe naal Sayyidina Zain al-Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Imam al-Sajidin, Imam al-Sajidin radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, you know why he was given this title? He was that great Imam that every single night of his life he read 1,000 nawafil in the court of Allah Almighty. These people were people of Jannatul Firdaus. These people are not only people who are forgiven, but they're in a position to forgive others as well. Imam al-Sajidi. Hamamiya kya namaz hai? और ऐसे इतना फख्र करने आती तो दो नमाज़ा पढ़ी था ऐसा सोचा ऐसा तो बड़ा मसल्ली है ही कौन ही बड़ा नमाजी है ही कौन ही Imam Zain al-Abidin radiyallahu anhu sabaq sekho these awliya, these men of Allah Almighty, they came to teach you and me, to guide you and me. Sayyidina Zain al-Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, one day they were reading their salah, and once they were reading their salah, their house began to catch fire. Their house caught fire. People were running and trying to put the fire out. Imam al-Sajidin continued reading his salah. Imam al-Sajidin, Zain al-Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala continued reading his salah. After the fire was put out, after he finished his salah, people came to him and said, Huzur, your house was on fire. Why didn't you stop your salah? Why didn't you break your salah? Why didn't you put the fire out? They go, you were busy putting out the fire of the dunya. I was busy putting out the fire of the akhirah. Hi. Imam Zain al-Abidin Qurban jaye on the Ahlul Bayt. Teri nasle paak mein hai bachcha bachcha noor ka, tu hai aine noor, tera sab garana noor. Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, sab Imam Zain al-Abidin. Hamari kya namaz hai aaj? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, observe your prayer. Brothers and sisters, if you want to be successful today, I pick a qasam by Allah Almighty that your success lies when you take your forehead and you do sajda and you say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. This is where your izzat and your success lies. And this is where the Muslims will be great again. Or Baba, if you want to celebrate Mawlidun Nabi, then celebrate it by reading your 5 daily prayer. Hujjatul Islam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he mentions in his Ihya Ulumuddin that when a person is in tashahhud, and he's saying At-Tahiyyatu Lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibatu wa salamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Hujjatul Islam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, not Ala Hazrat, before their time, Hujjatul Islam, they said that when you get to this point in your salah, you should stop and you should have the tasweer of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in front of you. You should have the image of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in front of you. And some awliya were those great men of Allah that they wouldn't continue this namaz until they got a jawab from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They wouldn't continue their salah, their namaz, until they got a jawab from Tajdar Medina. Ayyuhan Nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Aise awliya, aise men of Allah Almighty, they were going to sajda. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. And they wouldn't take their head from the ground up until they got a jawab from Jannatul Firdaus. Hamariya kya namaz hai? What are our prayers today? We've given so much emphasis and zor and effort into milad, and bas milad ki manana hai. Jalusi katana hai. Those things which are mustahab, we've taken them to the daraja of fard, and those things which are fard, we have neglected them today. Today we make excuses to miss our fast in the month of Ramadan. Today we look for fatwas from muftis. Oh ji, mufti sahab ne zakat dena hai. Mera ye masla hai, ye masla hai. We look for a way out of giving zakat. Hajj is fard upon you and me. We know we have the money and the resources, but still we don't choose to go to Baytullah. Still we don't choose to go to Medina tomorrow. Oh, agle saal jasa, agle saal jasa. Who knows whether you'll still be here next year? Why delay something which is fard upon you? And if you observe these things, Baba, this is one extreme. If you observe these things, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave you the glad tidings of Jannatul Firdaus. Nana, wali is door which wo hai na, that he reads his 5 daily prayer, he stays away from haram, he does halal, that person is a wali of our time. Both mushkil, 5 daily prayer with Jamaat. Adkal asahne Ala Hazrat mein followers are Maslak Ala Hazrat. For 40 years, Ala Hazrat didn't miss a single salah with Jamaat. Do this first, then you tell me what Maslak Ala Hazrat is. For 40 years, Ala Hazrat didn't miss a single salah with Jamaat. Every single namaz that he read with Jamaat. This is Ala Hazrat. And today you say you're representatives of Ala Hazrat. You're defenders of the maslak of Ala Hazrat. Hey, Ala Hazrat kut hai to tu sab kut hai. Bade bade daave karne to saji. And this is just the first article. I'm going to end on one before they kick me off. One more. And there's so much. Wallahi, I told you I can sit here till Fajr. Nachor of every single article. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Mi'rajul mu'min is in the salah. The ascension of the believer is in the salah. Why look everywhere else? Ithe dolne hai, uthe dolne hai. We neglect what is fard upon us. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam continued. And there was something I was going to mention about women's rights here as well. And the maqam of a mother, the maqam of a yes, a mother. Lekin bakati koni. I'm going to fast forward. Fast forward. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and this is probably the most common article which is known by all of us. And I will start this, I will end on this. Ek do waqiyat and then inshallah ijazat. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that, oh people, listen attentively. Verily, your Lord is one. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allah Almighty is one. And verily your father is also one as well. Yani, Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, your father is one as well. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, no Arab is superior to a non-Arab. And no non-Arab is superior to an Arab. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, likewise no black man is superior to a white man. And no white man is superior to a black man. The only superiority is by virtue of piety. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honorable person in the court of Allah is the one who has the most taqwa. The one who is the most God-fearing. He's the one who is the most honorable in the court of Allah Almighty. Baladri doesn't matter. Whether you're a Roger or you're a Chowdhury, or whether you're a Mercedes-Benz, silly Benz, or whether you're Rai, which I call rice. Me pata hai biryani mein khushboo aayi thi. Brother, bilatri doesn't matter in the court of Allah Almighty. What matters is taqwa. और पता नहीं वक्त कितना रहना है. लेकिन एक दो वाक़ियात. And this one I'm going to mention from Kashful Mahjub. Huzur Data Ali Hujwari rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. Sayyid Ali bin Uthman al-Hujwari rahmatullahi ta'ala. Data Ganj Baksh. They mention in the Kashful Mahjub a waqiyah that Abu Sulaiman Dawood al-Ta'i rahimahullah ta'ala, who was the student of Imam Abu Hanifa. Dawood al-Ta'i, student of Imam al-A'zam Imam Abu Hanifa. One day they came to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq radiyallahu anhu. Ahlul Bayt are sat here and their faces are radiant like the moon today. Allah. Ahlul Bayt. Now, sab kuch is from the Ahlul Bayt. Our deen today is from the Ahlul Bayt. Islam is today from the Ahlul Bayt. Or gaur se suno mere bhaiyo. If you take nothing with you today, take this waqia with you. Asa kuthala. Kuch kakhi na. May I hear the person is successful who humbles himself. Zunnun al-Misri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and Abu Qasim al-Qushayri rahimahullah ta'ala mentions it in his al-Risalat al-Qushayriya. Zunnun al-Misri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they had a qawl. I'm going to mention that qawl, then the waqia, then I'll end with that. They said that person who thinks he is something, that person who thinks he is something, in the court of Allah Almighty, he is nothing. We walk around with this pride and arrogance. I've got this much money in my bank balance. I'm driving such a nice car. I've got a big flashy house. I've got nice clothing on my back. Mere ko ilm hai. Mere ko tilawat-e-Quran hai. Sab kuch hai. This puts arrogance within us sometimes. And that gets the better of us. Zunnun al-Misri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they said that person who thinks he is something, don't assume that he is somewhere. Don't assume he's something in the court of Allah. In the court of Allah is nothing. But that person who thinks he's nothing, yani he humbles himself, lowers himself. That person who thinks he is nothing, Zunnun al-Misri, they said that person is something in the court of Allah. This is why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, never judge the person next to you. Those who are sitting on your right, those who are sitting on your left. But if a sister is not wearing a scarf, if a brother doesn't have a beard, brother, who are you to judge him? You don't know his maqam or martaba in the court of Allah Almighty. You don't know his daraja, his rank and status in the court of Allah Almighty. Tu kaun idea to study or to make a judgment on that person, on that sister, on that brother. Who are you? You and me are nothing. You and me are nothing. और गौर से सुनो आखिरी वाक़या, और फिर उस पर इजाज़त. Who came to who? बस तुझे जोश पर ही चल दिया. Imam साहब रोला बांध के Subhanallah जी Subhanallah. वो हुए साहबिया ना. Two guys went to a bayan of a Mawlid and they listened to the bayan. मेरे जाई सी ना रोला ही पाना सी रात पर रात कटना सी ये वो. And they both leave after the majlis. And one friend says to the other, fantastic bayan today. Top dollar, Imam Sahib hit the nail on the head. So friend number 2 says to friend number 1, tell me, what did Imam Sahib say? I don't know what they said, but fantastic. वो हाथ कटने से रोला पाने से अपना जज्बा जोश डालने से ये जो कोई इमाम में तकिया ही कोनी. अरे बाबा जे कुछ तो सीखिया नहीं तो फिर मेरा क्या फायदा रोला पाने ना. दाऊद अत्ताई आखिरी वाक़या. There was a student of who? Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu. आपके इमाम, हमारे इमाम, सबके इमाम. And there's a dalil for that, but that's another story for another day. Dawood al-Ta'i came to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq radiyallahu anhu. And you know who Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was? He was the ustad of Imam Abu Hanifa. This is why I say everything comes from the after test. Imam Abu Hanifa says that if I did not spend those 2 years with Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, then Abu Hanifa Nu'man bin Sabit would be halal. Yani he would be destroyed if he didn't spend those 2 years with Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq radiyallahu anhu. And Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the son of the great Imam Muhammad Baqir radiyallahu ta'ala. Imam Muhammad Baqir, correct me if I'm wrong, is the great son of the great Zainul Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala. Ahlul Bayt yathar. Qurban jaw on these Ahlul Bayt yathar. Acha dekhe aakhri waqia. And Dawood al-Ta'i, they said that you are the son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. God says sunnah. No Arab is superior to a non-Arab. No non-Arab is superior to an Arab. Second article. No white man over a black man, no black man over a white man. God says sunnah. Aakhri waqia. He said that you are the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dawood al-Ta'i is saying this to Imam Jafar al-Sadiq in Masjid al-Nabi Sharif, in Barghai Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They said that you are the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They said, counsel me, because my heart has become dark. Aye. And if this was that very same Dawood al-Ta'i, that for 1 full year, he did not speak in the majlis of Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu. He was silent. He exercised sukut. Asa jithaune raat par mari onne asal adab of the students of knowledge. For 1 full year, he didn't speak in the presence of Imam Abu Hanifa. He is coming to Ja'far as-Sadiq and said that my heart has been darkened. Tell me, counsel me, advise me. What should I do? Aye. At that time, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, they replied. They said, oh Abu Sulaiman, you are the great Gnostic of this time. You are a great Waliullah. You are a great ascetic of this time. They go, what need is there of counsel from me? They go, what need is there counsel of me? At that point, Imam Dawood al-Ta'i said, O son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your family are superior to all families. Your family is superior to the whole of mankind. It is fard incumbent upon you to give me counsel. Jawab suno, aur is par ghaur karo. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. Ajizi dekhni hai na? You look at these great Imams, how they follow the naqsh qadam of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would walk with humility. He would walk with his head lowered. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best example. And the Ahlul Bayt Athhar, the Ulama Karam, the Awliya, Sufiya, they are the reflection of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said that, oh Abu Sulaiman, I fear that on the day of judgment, Lata mentioned this in the Kashf al-Mahjub. They go, I fear that on the day of judgment, me being the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will not benefit me. Can there be any greater maqam than this? They go that on the day of judgment, me being the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will not benefit me. And I know that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say to me that why did you not fulfill the obligation of following in my footsteps? Why didn't you fulfill the obligation of following in my footsteps? لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. Because I fear that on the day of judgment, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala's beloved Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my grandfather, he will say to me that you didn't follow my sunnah, you didn't follow my footsteps, you didn't act upon my deen. Aisa taqwa. At that point, Imam Dawood al-Ta'i began to cry. He began to weep. And he goes that, Ya Allah, if this is the halat of the one who is created from the clay of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if this is the halat of the one who is the coolness of the eyes of Fatima Zahra, the halat of the one who is from the loins of Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, then who is Dawood al-Ta'i in your court, Ya Allah? Who is Dawood al-Ta'i in your court, Ya Allah? Look at this taqwa and humility by these great Imams. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he had the khazane or the keys to the khazane of the dunya. This is why when they were sitting in their majlis, they would say to their students that if on the day of Qiyamah Allah forgives you, then you tell Allah to forgive me. Aye. Ajizi. That if Allah forgives you, you tell Allah to forgive me. And if Allah is to forgive me, then I will do bakshish for you, inshallah. No Arab is superior to a non-Arab. No black man is superior to a white man. Humble yourselves. وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. The servants of Allah Almighty are those people who walk on the earth with humility. Brothers and sisters, today's Paygham and message is become people of humility. Ajizi. If Allah has blessed you with ilm, lower yourself. If Allah has blessed you with nasab, lower yourself. If Allah has blessed you with mal and daulat, lower yourself. For the one who lowers himself, in reality Allah Almighty elevates him. وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُزِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.